Some haunting live images that you see right now in front of us. The skyline back there, the darkened skyline of that is of Gaza. You see flares, and as we understand right now, more than half of Gaza is without power. The shelling continuing today here, and the ceasefire obviously not honored, and the violence continues, and casualties on both sides here. Unfortunately, a story that does not seem to be ending too soon. Okay, let's come back closer stateside. The embattled Department of Veterans Affairs may be getting a necessary and needed boost. $17 billion from Congress specifically. Today, a bipartisan bill introduced that would provide funding to treat veterans with private health care. More medical staff would be hired, and also more VA clinics would be built. However, legislation needs to get the stamp of approval by both the House and Senate. It took some tense negotiations, but two lawmakers say they've hammered out a bipartisan deal that provides at least $15 billion in emergency funding for the Department of Veteran Affairs.
This agreement will go a long way to helping resolve the crisis that exists out there today.
Back in May, the VA came under fire when reports came out that at dozens of facilities around the nation, veterans were waiting months to get treatment. Families spoke out about loved ones who they say died because they couldn't get quickly to the care that they needed. The scandal led to the resignation under pressure of the longtime VA Secretary, General Eric Shinseki. The bipartisan legislation introduced today addresses two key issues that lawmakers say contributed to many of the VA's problems. First, it provides $10 billion to contract care outside of the VA, requiring the government to pay private doctors to treat veterans who are facing long wait times or veterans who live at least 40 miles from a VA facility. Second, the bill provides $5 billion for the VA to add doctors and establish 27 new health clinics around the nation. It's a hefty price tag, and $12 billion of it is new spending.
Planes and tanks and guns are a cost of war. So is taking care of the men and women who use those weapons and who fight our battles.
You know, Andrew, I'm going to be watching closely to see if anybody in the House or Senate's got the, you know what, to vote no to this.
I bet you there will be no votes, and I bet you it'll be on cost from some House Republicans. It'll be, you know, we don't have the money for this. Where's the money going to come from? You haven't slotted where the money's coming or how we're paying for this. I wouldn't be surprised if you had 200 no votes.
Do you imagine explaining that you wrote a blank check for a war, never asked where the money's going to come from, and now you're going to decide here to penny pinch for vets, and we see what they're going through. Nobody debates. Everyone's yelling at the VA because they're not doing their job, rightfully so. And now when they finally come up with a plan to do it, time out here. I want to see where we're getting the money from. We can send the guys to war, but we can't figure out where to find the money to take care of them.
You know, the VA is still using computer systems from the 1980s, from like the mid-1980s. Think about the computer
like war games.
If you had a computer, yeah, in 1980, it was garbage compared to something that's sitting on your desk today. We talked about this before, but maybe when you're funding a war, you should also fund veterans care, or at least veterans health care. It seems like the least you can do.
I've been doing this for 15 years, Dominic. The story, it's the same thing. This is before even Iraq and Afghanistan. They always underestimate the cost of care for these guys long term, the physical, even the PTSD, etc. And now it's so acute because you got so many guys coming back with injuries that they, you know, would have died from before. It's a national shame, this thing.
Richard, the good news about all of this, if we can look for a silver lining, if you will, it's that it's an election year, alluding to what you two just pointed out. And while some may vote no, I call it automated response A. We don't have the money to pay for this. You can just press the button now. But again, in an election year, they're going to find a way it's going to pass.
If it becomes a Republican narrative that the Democrats can hand, that's going to be something Republicans will regret. That I'll tell you, because this isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. Caring for the vets, you know, it's like waving the flag. It's something you should do, right? Coming up next, Pontiff preparing to make a trip to the United States. We now know he will be stateside. We're going to have a look at easily the most popular pope in recent memory and his steps to change the church when we come back.